Hi, we're Bree and Justin. We're cybersecurity experts here at Pluralsight. Today we're here to discuss the intersection between AI and cybersecurity. What issues are keeping leaders up at night, what questions they're asking themselves and their organizations. So let's start with the first question that we have here. What makes AI a threat to cybersecurity? What are some of those common misconceptions that we have in this space?
Thanks, Bree, for the question. So, AI itself isn't inherently a threat, it's a tool. The real challenge comes from how it's misused. Attackers can leverage AI to automate and scale their attacks, exploit vulnerabilities more efficiently, or spread misinformation rapidly. It's not that AI creates an entirely new type of threat, it enhances existing ones. Some of the common misconceptions are the idea of AI powered attacks being a new category of cyber threats. It's kind of misleading. AI is a force multiplier for traditional attacks, right? Not entirely a creator of something new. Some believe AI can autonomously create and spread malware, but that's really not the case. It still requires human input and orchestration. Another similar belief is that AI can bypass traditional security methods and measures. So while it can identify gaps more efficiently, strong layer defenses are still very effective. AI isn't inherently malicious; it's kind of neutral, right? So its impact depends on the intent of the user. By understanding that misconception, organizations can kind of focus on meaningful mitigations and not let fear drive the decisions.
Yeah, I like that. I like that you said that I use it as a tool. And I think that right now we're going to see AI utilized as a tool across all roles in cybersecurity. I mean, across all roles in technology, across the industry in general. But AI can help cyber defenders find alerts and find, rules and detections quickly. AI can also help attackers escalate their attacks by scale and efficiency. And I think right now the focus should be is that AI is benefiting attackers more than it's benefiting defenders right now. A lot of the technology that we have for defense and utilizing AI to make that like defense mechanism more strong is at its infancy. And so we need to focus a lot of our research on pulling that into our defenses and making sure our security controls are in place in the place that it should be and not relying on AI to do that. I also like to take a step back here when you talk about AI powered attacks, that triggers me a little bit because it is such a buzzword and it takes me back to when everyone was trying to sell zero trust as a new terminology and a new way of a kind of one-stop shop solution for all things security. And AI powered attacks is kind of the newest buzzword in my mind of how we're trying to sell vendor products and vendor tools of this tool, you push this button and it stops AI powered attacks, which is not quite how that technology or those attacks even work. So I really want to put a pin here on yes, AI is technology, it's a tool, it's going to benefit all of us in the future and now, but I want to make sure that we're really focusing on the types of attacks and techniques and tactics that are really hitting organizations right now, like supply chain, particular types of threat actors and living off the land binaries and using those types of techniques and really making sure that our defenses and are tested and relevant and hitting the right measures that they should.
Those are awesome points, Bree, right? So, from a leadership perspective, what steps should organizations take to mitigate these AI related risks?
I think this is a really good point, and I want to put out a word of caution here. Is a lot of things we're seeing is oh well, we have to wait for government regulations and policies and new laws to be passed and kind of putting it back on kind of the governance perspective. But I don't know about you, but I don't know a lot of attackers that really like to abide by the law. I think ransomware is still legal, and yet we see that happening day in and day out in the industry, right? So I would really like to say it's in our hands right now to make sure that our critical security controls are tested, are in place, that we have multiple layers of defense or what we kind of call defense in depth. And then the other one I've been really pushing is microsegmentation of our networks. If you have multiple areas where there's really sensitive information stored, making sure that, if that aspect of that network is targeted or hit or breached, then they can't pivot and laterally move across your network to other additional sources and assets. Considering all those improvement in security controls, do you feel like AI requires a change in an organization's security posture as we focus on those?
So not necessarily. Security fundamentals, defense in depth, kind of what you talked about, is really as relevant as ever. Organizations have to adapt these principles to address the new scale and speed of AI. The key is really kind of staying current, evolving with tools and practices, maintaining your vigilance. It's not about reinventing the wheel and fine tuning it completely. Upskilling your workforce is as important as ever, making sure you're testing and trialing and putting the effort in to learn about these tactics and techniques that are being utilized, finding a way to emulate them in your environment so your staff can train on those. Nothing's worse than having an incident and having no planned response, or believing you have a planned response and it just goes by the wayside because no one's ever put it into practice.
Yeah, that's great. I completely agree. And one of the other questions that we get often in this area, which I think is a really cool way to think about this, is from a security leader perspective, how do you balance AI innovation and being cutting edge and incorporating all these new tools into your systems and balance that with risk management?
Yeah, it's a critical balance, and it starts with just kind of establishing your strong governance frameworks. Leaders need to ensure that innovation doesn't outpace security oversight. So your collaboration is as important as ever. Security teams need to be involved early in those conversations and just be in the room while you're making these AI decisions. It's going to allow them to help identify and mitigate risk proactively. Really, and at the same time, it's important to embrace the potential of AI on the defensive side. We've touched a little bit about that as well, but right now it's really more of an offensive tool. Defensively, you can use it for threat detection, automation, incident response. It can give organizations a huge edge, especially when you're dealing to an incident response. So it's really about balancing innovation. It's not about avoiding AI completely. Use it responsibly, but definitely use it strategically.
Yeah, I think as we talk about like risk management, that also brings to my mind of like third party vendors and how we're like assessing our vendors and our security tools and our security stack and those, technologies that we bring in to help incorporate our security teams and security operations. And so I think that that's a piece too is like you want the vendor that's kind of cutting edge and is selling all these new types of capabilities, but like at its core, where does that like balance in your risk management policy and your risk management strategy? So really be sure, I love kind of what you said of that balance of risk management and cutting edge, because just because you have the most up-to-date and newest capabilities doesn't mean you're the most secure.
So let's shift gears a little bit, Bree. What do cybersecurity professionals really need to focus on in this kind of new era of AI?
Oh, I like this. This is great because we constantly talk about one of our assets in security being our people. They're a weakness and they're an asset at the same time. And so, really making sure your entire workforce across the board are upskilled and using cybersecurity top of mind in their day to day actions is great. I will talk about the like security operations and security practitioners. I think there's some new areas that are really proving beneficial to to thwarting kind of cybersecurity attacks. And I think the first one I kind of want to talk about is threat intelligence. We have a lot of source and shared sources that bring a lot of really useful information on how cyber attackers are getting around our defenses. And cybersecurity has always been this cat and mouse game of, at one point in history, even if you go back to the Trojan horse, someone breached access to somewhere they weren't supposed to be able to have access to, and then it improved the defenses, and then someone figured out a way around that defense. And that's even now in today's, it's the cat and mouse game of cybersecurity. We're consistently improving our defenses to thwart off attackers that are getting around those defenses, and it escalates, right? So that threat intelligence piece really brings us in that important information on what attackers are using, what techniques are using, what tech tools they're using, and that's going to only make our defenders better. Secondly, kind of along that same vein, we've talked about AI for cyber defense and AI for cyber offense. I think that there's a shift in the industry happening, and I'm really excited about it. I hope it continues, of improving our defenses by using kind of an attacker's first mindset and really testing each one of our controls and testing our defenses. So acting like the attacker, making sure we're prepared, making sure we have done crisis simulations and exercises where we kind of are pushing all of our security controls to the limit. And so we know that they're going to stop these attackers in their tracks. Or if they happen to get into the network, where can we find them at the earliest point of breach? That's kind of called emulation or pen testing or internal red teaming, whatever you want to call it. But I think that's a really important skill, and it's really cool to do with AI because it used to be, it is a completely different focus of security that not a lot of people traditionally thought about. But with AI, you can just go and say, hey, teach me this technique, and it's small and it's a single, what we call TTP or technique. Tactic, technique, and procedure. And you can just use one tiny little technique to bypass that security control. And if it catches it, great. Escalate and make it more difficult and do it further. But if it doesn't, then you know how to improve your defenses and making sure you really have kind of all the layers needed to protect your castle, so to speak. The other really important part, I think Justin, you and I talk about a lot, is a lot of that underlying fundamental knowledge of how IT systems and networking systems work. And I think while that's really important for cybersecurity professionals and IT professionals in general, I think there's a lot of topics here that we should try to teach our entire workforce.
Yeah, your non-technical employees, it's really all about awareness and safe practices. They need to understand basic security concepts. They need to recognize phishing emails. There's a ton of tools in the industry that can help you achieve that. There's tools even today that are using AI to help achieve that to, as threat actors are building malicious phishing emails, these companies are creating defensive measures that also use AI to create very similar looking emails so you can test your staff and employees, test them on social engineering tactics, teach them about secure browsing, how to handle email safely. This is all really back to the fundamentals. But an informed staff is really your best defense against mitigating any risk in the future. And the biggest thing is really kind of create a foster a culture of continuous learning around cybersecurity. It's vital to your organization's future and health. Cyber threats are constantly evolving. They're rapidly changing every day, and it can impact both technical and even non-technical employees, right? So everybody needs to stay informed to help protect the organization. And I've said it over and over, and Bree mentioned it here. People are an asset and a weakness. They're the outside layer of the onion, so to speak. They are the first ones that are going to be attacked, unfortunately. So if they are up to snuff, it's going to help your entire organization for the future.
That's great. I hope we gave you lots of valuable information for security practitioners and security leaders here today. Kind of just wanted to quickly wrap this up. While AI is a transformative tool with significant potential for cyber defense and cyber offense, it doesn't inherently on its own pose a threat to cybersecurity. Its misuse, however, can amplify those risks and really focus on your risk management and governance frameworks. So making sure we're really implementing those robust security measures, the defense in depth, network segmentation, zero trust policies, fostering a culture of awareness, staying current with different practices in the industry, how they're benefiting kind of both sides of the coin here, and then really making sure that your workforce is skilled up in cybersecurity and kind of really knows about what's happening in this space. If you want to see more information about the intersection of cybersecurity and AI, check out our content and training on Pluralsight.